Let's say I wanted to create a custom floor for my Unity project. To do that, I would go into Mudbox, and in Mudbox I'm going to make a new scene. Let's not save that, we'll just do something totally new. I don't need any of the prefabs they give me. I'm going to use the tiling plane function. So to do that, I'm going to close this window, and inside Mudbox I'm going to go create tiling plane. It's going to say what kind of tiling plane do you want. I'm going to say I want a 3x3 with 4x4 quads. That's fine. We're going to create the tiling plane and also create a target for extraction. Make sure that's selected. I'm going to create it, and then in here, and again, to see your grid on or off, you just have to click grid, right? If you don't, that's right click off your model. You can get these options, but I'm going to turn it off for now. I think it works better without seeing that. In here, I can go ahead, and now that I have my model in my scene, we have our tiling plane, that's what it just created, and we have our extraction target. Now you can't see your extraction target, but all that is just a plane. If I were to look at that, it's a plane that sits in the middle of this particular quadrant tiling plane they have. But anyways, on our tiling plane, let's just go ahead and deselect our model. I'm going to go to my sculpt settings, and I'm going to up the resolution of this so I can actually do some sculpting work. So I'll just Shift D, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D, bring it up to like level 5. You don't want to go any crazier just because these computers are, that's pretty much all they can handle. In here I'll start sculpting a little tiling plane. So let's say I wanted to make a cobblestone ground, right? I can change my brush size by using the bracket keys, or I can use the B key to change my brush size. I'm going to start on Sculpt, and in here I'm just going to make a little cobblestone ground. I'll do my first little cobblestone, my next little cobblestone, my next one, my next one, next one, and make this one a little bigger. Next one. It's as nice as you can kind of work all over the tiling plane. You're not like confined to a specific area, and it'll just repeat as needed on the tiling plane. So I can come in here, make another little stone, make another one that kind of goes up right here, one right there, another one right in there a little bit, and another one right there. Right, okay. So we'll say that that's great. That's what I'm going to use for my cobblestone road. I can then come in and just refine it a little bit. So let's just enhance some of these so we can see them a little bit better. Give them a little bit of undulation so they're not just all the same. Alright, come in like that, that, that. And I'm going to reduce my brush size, and I'm going to invert it so I can kind of cut into them a little bit. Also, come in here. I'll just kind of trace around these cobblestones so they pop out a little bit better. All right. Just come in here and kind of trace what appears to be the stones. Around these guys like that. Something like that, right? Kind of looks like cracked earth actually, but that'll work. I'm going to go ahead and just increase my brush size and just kind of smooth out some of these divots. So I'll just come around and just go back over those lines a little bit so it's not so intense. I'm just holding the Shift key to do this just to smooth out that detail so it's not just so crazy. Just come in here. All right, that's pretty good. All right. That looks pretty good. Now what I can do is apply some paint to this. You can even sculpt detail as well if you wanted to. Let's say I wanted a little more like divots and things like that on these particular cobblestones. I could come in, and it almost looks like scales. It's kind of cool. But with the sculpt tool selected, if you grab a stencil, even like the grime one, and put that on, it'll actually sculpt the detail in there. If I just go ahead and bring my strength down a little bit and my size up, I can kind of sculpt some of that actual detail in there as well if I need to, which is kind of nice if you need to get like surface detail on there. And you can go ahead and move your models in and out. You can also move, you'll see right here the stencil, you can move it. If you hold the S key, you can move the stencil around. So if I'm like, hey, you know what, I want to add a little bit of that detail here and there, I can move that stencil around as needed. Kind of give myself some of that detail, right? That's just using the S key. You can see the stencil tools right here. And then when you're done, say that this is all good. I go ahead and hide it by using the Q key. And then I can come back into my little cobblestones right here, and we can start applying some paint. So I can go into my paint tools right here, and using the paintbrush, the first thing you want to do is, by default it gives you kind of this pinkish material. That's just the default material that Mudbox gives you, but we want to get rid of that and just give us our own color. So to do that, under paint, I'm just going to go to my color tools, choose a nice gray medium color about like that, and what I'll do is I'll just come in here and go down to this little function, flood paint layer. We'll just say flood. It's going to say, hey, let's create a new paint layer. We'll just call it base, and 2048 is great. We'll say OK, and flood again just in case. There we go. That gives us our nice gray background. And then with that selected, what we can do is come in here, and you can either make a new layer of paint if you want to, or just paint over the existing layer. For now, I'm just going to paint over the existing layer. But like I said, I like to use the dodge and burn tools to do this, to kind of paint in that light and shadow detail. So with these particular tools, I'm going to come in with burn, and I'm going to change my brush size, and I'm going to bring it down in my brush size so it's not so, the exposure is not so high, because if it's really high, it's just going to be like black, right? I'm going to undo that. I'm going to bring that exposure and the strength down to like 33 and 40, put it around there. And then I can come in and kind of paint these little cracks, some little shadow detail, right? So I can come in here and just kind of trace over these lines and just burn that kind of shadow detail into the texture, right? And that should update as I go through. Usually you got to kind of move it a little bit to see the update happen, but you're painting across, you know, all these tiles to make it match up, so you want to do that to make sure you're not like repainting over something. But kind of go through there and just kind of accentuate those little crevices and stuff, right? Come in here, paint those guys up, right? Looks like I got them. I get them all. Right, maybe some of the cobblestones I want to make a little bit darker than others. So using the burn tool, I can kind of come in and do that. Just selectively choose some to be a little bit darker than the others. Right, maybe just here and there, kind of add some more shadow so it's not so the same. And I like to like turn it in the light just to see, you know, how it's going to reflect or refract off that light. I'll come in here, and I'll probably come in with my dodge tool, which is the reverse of the burn tool. This actually adds light. So with this, I can come in and just kind of paint light here and there. I like to do it kind of, if I'm doing cobblestones, maybe just on like the tops of the stones a little bit. That might be a little too high on the exposure. So I might just come in and just reduce my exposure down a little bit. Undo, there we go. Let's turn that down to like pretty low. Maybe make my size a little bit higher. There we go, that's better. Just so you get an even burn, right? So I can come in here and just kind of add these little highlights in here as needed. All right, I'll help kind of stylize that up. And what I'll do is, what's nice about using something like Mudbox to create a texture for like flooring or cobblestones or anything you're trying to make is you can do variations, right? So we could do this as one. Let's say that we love this one, we save this document, this is going to be our base cobblestone. Then we can create another material that has cobblestone with dead grass. And we could make another layer with some dead grass on there, maybe some cobblestones are missing, right? Then we could do another one like cobblestones with demonic sigils on there, right? And then we could carve in some, demonic stuff. And then in Unity, if we were using our terrain, we could paint those textures and like kind of overlap them and kind of blend them together to get nice variation. Or we could just, have just variants of the texture for many use case scenarios. But right now, let's say that that's pretty good. Maybe I'll just come in and add a little more sculptural detail in here. So I'll go with my Sculpt tool. Sometimes I like to use the wax tool and bring the size down and just kind of hit it up. That might actually be a little too much. Undo. Go ahead and undo that. And let's take our strength down way on that. This works really good if you're using like a Wacom tablet or something like that. But because I'm using a mouse, I'm just trying to make do here. So I'm just going to go through and just kind of hit up these edges. These will kind of give you those sharper edges on here for the stones. All right. And the wax is kind of nice too because you can kind of flatten out areas if you need to, like here and there. There's a certain spot you want to just add a little bit of flatness to the stone in a certain spot, or just kind of give it a little bit of extra detail. You can kind of come in with that and do that. All right, just kind of hit up these little areas. All right, so you kind of bring the relief of that stone out a little bit more the more you kind of play with it. Just come in and just play around with those different textures. Smooth here and there where needed. You can use the smooth tool, come in and smooth parts out if they don't look right. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's see. I always like to just kind of like analyze it and look at it. I think for a ground texture that looks pretty solid. And then just to add a little bit of extra depth, I'll just come back in with my Sculpt tool. I'm going to invert it and make its size super small here. I'll just kind of come in and really just hit those edges up. A small brush just to really pop out those segments. All right. Just kind of trace over these little gaps. All right. You're constantly kind of going between sculpting and detail to just kind of help the relief of the texture that you're making, and whatever texture you're working on, you just keep going in and kind of bouncing between the two to get a specific look. And what I'll do is after I finish this cobblestone, I'll show you guys how to do a nice variation of this too if we wanted to do a one with like lights on it or something. So that's looking pretty good. It's pretty solid. All right. So there's my cobblestone texture. So let's say I wanted to take this out of Mudbox and bring it into my project. So to do so, under the one way to get the texture out is if we look at our UV view, or I'm sorry, our 3D view, if we come up to layers and we go to paint layers, we already have our diffuse layer right here, base. So to get our texture, we can just export that out. That's what we painted on there. We can just say, hey, let's export that out. And that will, let me just make sure I have my object selected tiling plane. Deselect, let me go up to my layers. Okay, paint. So we can just export out our base layer by export selected. And I'm just gonna make a folder on my desktop for brick or cobblestone. All right, we'll say create. And we'll do cobblestone base. That would be the texture or the actual color data. We'll save that out. And then we can come in and actually export out our normal map data as well. And to do that, we just come up to UVs and maps, extract texture maps. We'll go to new operation. And we can call this like normal. You can call the operation whatever you want. We can say normal maps. We'll click on normal maps. And for our target models, we're going to go into our object list. And it's kind of frustrating because that extract texture maps like doesn't dock. You can't keep it in there, but we'll click on our tiling plane and we will add selected. Nope, let's see. Hold on. We want to, okay, I'm sorry. Our target model right here, that's what we want to burn the detail into. So that's going to be our extraction target. So under target models, we're going to add that. Under source models, we're going to click on our tiling plane. And then we're going to add that. We're going to use subdivision to get the actual sculptural data and generate one map for all targets. That's totally fine. We're going to make it 2048 by 2048. It's base file name. We'll go into that Cobblestone directory and we'll just save it as Cobblestone normal. Cobblestone normal. Save it. 8-bit's fine. And then we'll say extract. It should give us a quick normal map on there. There we go. And just to double check that, I'm going to go into my desktop and look at that normal map, which is under Cobblestone. Great. We've got our texture and we've got our normal map. Right? So those two combined give you the look of what we created, right? So inside of Unity, if I grab those guys, if I go into my Unity project, and again, just inside, let me make a folder inside my assets here. I'll just call it Cobblestone folder. We'll call it Cobblestone. Okay, inside Cobblestone, I'll add in let me open up that folder here. I'll add in my texture and my normal map. And I'll go ahead and create a new material. So I'll go create new material, call it Cobblestone. All right. And under Cobblestone, we'll slot in under albedo our texture. And under our normal map, then it says, hey, is this a normal map? We say, yeah, it is. So now it knows. We can preview the texture down here and look at it, right? So that's what it looks like. And then to add it onto our scene, we can just drag and drop it wherever we need it, right? So there we go. We've got a quick little cobblestone texture. Let's play the game really quickly. Let's see what that looks like, right? So pretty cool. Like you can get in there and make some really nice quick textures as needed, depending on what you're looking for. Now, let's say we wanted to change, the size of the texture. We could easily come into our material textures here and go to its tiling settings, and we could reduce that. So like go 0.5 if you want them a little bigger, or 0.75, 0.75. Get them like a good size, right? Say that that's good. Okay. One of the other things we can do is we can extract shadow data off that model as well, because if we look at our material, we only have two in there. We've got our texture data and our normal map. We have this occlusion setting right here. Occlusion is the shadow data of your texture. So if you want to tell it, no, this has specific shadow data I'd like to use, you can use that as well, and that would be good for all these little crevices and things like that. So to get that, what we can do is go back into Mudbox and do a new operation to get that. We just come up to UVs and maps, extract texture maps. We'll do new operation. We'll call it occlusion, and we'll click on the ambient occlusion map. And again, just like we did for the other texture, we can go ahead and select our target model, which is our extraction target. Add that, and our source model is our tiling plane, and we'll add that. We'll use best for our quality method. We'll use subdivision. We'll do a 2048 by 2048. Shadow darkness, we can actually turn that up a little bit because we're going to use it for this map. So I'm going to give it, and we'll just go all the way up, and we'll even increase the contrast a little bit. The map type, we're going to go texture, and its file name we'll put in Cobblestone, and we'll call it Cobblestone AO, ambient occlusion AO, right? Save it, and then we're going to extract it into that directory. That's going to go through its process. Hopefully this goes quickly, we'll see. There we go, finished. It's going much faster now. And then I'm going to go into that Cobblestone directory, Cobblestone, and there's our AO map, our shadow data. Now there's things you can do with this. Doesn't look like I got that much shadow data out of there, but what we could do is we could open this up in, well, let's see how it looks. Let's drag it into Unity really quickly. If we take a look at our texture, under the occlusion setting, you can drag that in there and made it a little bit darker, right? But if we really wanted to pop that out, what we could do is open this AO up in Photoshop. This might be a little advanced, so let me go ahead and sign in really quickly. Continue. Just sign in here. So with this AO texture in Photoshop, you could just come into your brightness and contrast, and you could increase that if needed, or even come into your levels and increase those levels as needed to really kind of give it more of that light and shadow detail as needed, right? Maybe do a couple passes on that if you need to. Something like that. All right, you can come and do it even. Blur it a little bit. Something like that. Now let's go ahead and adjustments, levels. And this is only if you really care about that kind of stuff. But file, save as, and then save as on my computer. And we'll just AO new. Okay. And then with the AO new, bring that into Unity. And on my texture, if you look at it down here, I bring that on, change that. Right? Not a huge difference, but you can mess with that detail as needed. Right? So you see in the distance how it gets a little bit darker. Right? So you can play around with those values. Now, one of the other cool things you can do is variation. Right? So right now we have this standard cobblestone texture. Right? Looks fairly okay in our project. I could have spent more time on it, but it's fine for now. But let's say I wanted a variation where, you know what, this looks great, but man, there's a part in my level where I want that texture to change so it doesn't look like the same repeating texture over and over again, right? So to do that inside Mudbox, I could go ahead and save out this particular project. Hold on one second. Just close that door real quick. I could save this as we'll just save this as Cobblestone. We'll save scene as, and we'll go into our Cobblestone directory, and we'll just call it Cobblestone. And we'll save it. But let's say we wanted a variation, which has like, I don't know, maybe some of these stones have like little glowing sigils or something on there, right? So to do that, now that I have this project saved, I can go ahead and edit this to be something different. So I can come in here and say, you know what? Let's go ahead and sculpt some of these stones so they're glowing and have like an emissive part to them, right? So underneath my texture here, I can come in and make sure I'm on my tiling plane, deselected, have sculpting selected here. I'm gonna invert the function, so I go down with my sculpting, and let's just carve some little sigils in here, right? So on some of these, I'll make my size a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Something like this. All right, so let's say some of these have like cool little, I don't know, demonic little things, right? So we'll do some kind of like that. And maybe it's like that, right? I don't know. Do some crazy stuff, right? And maybe another one. Okay. That's fine. All right, so we've got these different cobblestones, and in my paint view, if I go to paint tools, I'll go down to my paint settings, go to paintbrush, and under my layers, we'll go ahead and paint a new layer that's red, and maybe I get like orange. I'll go ahead and paint in the orange of these little sigils, right? Paint these guys in. And let's see, I'll come in here and do that. That's looking great. Let's come and get that. A couple more. Is that everything? Let's see. All right, so we got all those. We've got a paint texture of those little, you know, markings or whatever in the stones. We can go ahead and add a new layer that is an emissive layer. So to do that, all I did was right click in my layer palette. I can come in here and say, you know what, let's make these emissive, right? And want these to glow, right? So, oh, whoops, my bad, hold on, delete layer. Selective, new layer, sorry. I'm going to make emissive, and instead of my channel for diffuse, I'm going to change my channel to incandescence, and say OK. So what I can do in here is, this is always kind of fun, I can paint these glows on this too, so I can reduce its strength, but I can come in here and really paint these up so these guys are kind of glowing, right? Because glowing is always cool. Get in there, gonna paint these up a little bit. Close, are we almost done? Right. Trace out these little shapes really quickly. All right, maybe I'll add another little spot glow on them, like that. So they really feel nice and magical. Something like that. Okay. Great. Now to export out this variant of the texture that we have, we do it exactly the same way. So we'll just come into our diffuse texture, and one thing I like to do is just merge everything down. So we'll merge visible, and I will export selected. And we will put that on our Cobblestone, was it desktop, Cobblestone. Make a subfolder in here, I'll just call it Cobblestone Magic. Great. And in here we'll go Cobblestone Magic Base. All right, save that one. We'll also save the incandescent, the emissive texture. Right click on that. We'll export that out. We'll say Cobblestone Magic Emissive. We'll save that. And then we'll also export out again the normal map, which is easy. We'll just come up to your UVs and maps, extract texture maps. We'll use our normal maps operation that we set up. And we'll say extract because we already have it already set up. If I wanted to edit this whole process, it could, but it's already set up for us, so we can just extract it again. So I'll just say extract. It's going to run through the process. It should extract it. Should have it. Should be all good to go. And so then, if I just come down to in here, let's see, was this the, okay, there's our, we'll drop that in there. So we've got inside our Cobblestone Magic, we've got our Emissive, our base, and our Cobblestone, right, or our normal. So what we can do now is create another material with these set up. So I can just make a subfolder in my materials folder, which I'll call Cobblestone Magic. And then here, I'll go ahead and bring in Cobblestone Magic. I've got my Cobblestone. The Emissive, we'll go ahead and bring these in here. Set up a new material, just like we did on the last one. Create material. Cobblestone Magic. And in here we'll drag our normal map in. Fix it. Drag our texture in. And now we'll add emission. We'll go ahead and grab this emissive texture in. Oh. Now the one thing you have to do with emission textures, which I didn't go over, but inside, so when we export out an emissive texture out of Mudbox, it comes in as like a transparent image, but the way Unity works with emissive textures, if you're using emissive textures going forward, is you need to give it a black background. It needs to have that in there for reference, or else it kind of gives you these orb looks, right? It'll try to put it in there, but it just won't render it correctly. So what we can do is just open that in Photoshop, and in Photoshop just create a background layer for it and fill it with black. Right? You can use the paint can to do that, or just Option backspace. That'll do it as well. So then we export. We can flatten this, merge visible, flatten image, and then just save this again. That'll get rid of that alpha channel, and it'll just be a black background. And then you can bring that into Unity. You'll see how it fixes it, right? Instead of this orby weird look, it gives you a nice clean emissive map. So if I go into my texture, instead of these orbs, and I bring this one in, now I have these nice lit up things, right? So you can mess around with that. So what you can do is, you know, obviously, let's say we wanted to use this texture. Let's put it back at 1 just so they match. But let's say on this particular stone, we wanted to use our magic cobblestone, right? We could just put that on there and have a variant, right? So there's a lot you can do with mixing up textures and things of that nature. Really cool. I think you can even come in and, I think we can even, yeah, you can increase the intensity too of those, right? So if you wanted those to be like more glowy, and then actually if we wanted to use that AO from the last one, also on here, we can add that in there. There you go, right? So, you know, as you're kind of going through your level, if you want areas that have, you know, just difference to them, or you want to alter a particular texture and reuse it. If you're designing like a pathway, typically I would, if it was cobblestone and it was on like nature, I'd probably do like cobblestone, then ones with missing cobblestones, then regulars, then ones with grass or pools of water or whatever, and just kind of stagger them as I go through the level and have like 4 or 5 materials for that particular pathway. Yo, what's up?
You can also just like paint into like mixable textures, right? Like
You can. So yeah, what you can do, so yes. So the cool thing is if you're using terrain, right? And we came in and said, you know what, let's make a terrain in here. So we'll go up to Game Object and create, we'll do terrain. I'm not sure if terrain supports emissives. Maybe it does. We'll see. But with terrain, we can go in and set up terrain layers. So I can come here and say, you know what? Let's make a, go to my paint tools in here and say edit terrain layers. Let's go and add a new one. So create layer, and let's find our cobblestone, this guy, right? I've got a cobblestone layer. On this, we can call it cobblestone. Cobblestone terrain, all right? We can, you know what, yeah, I don't think it adds, don't believe you can do emissive on terrain just yet. But you can mix up terrain textures, so once you set a new... So one thing they haven't done with Unity yet is have it so you can use materials on terrain. It's like you have to make terrain layers, which don't support everything, you know? But, you know, we've got our terrain layer here. Let me just zoom in here on a particular level. There are plugins available on the asset store that do let you do that. But, you know, yeah, kind of the name of the game is mixing up those different things. So on this particular terrain level, let me just make a quick variant without emissive on there. Let me see though. Let me see if I can add a emissive. Let me see. Edit terrain layers. Yeah, it doesn't look like I can do it actually. Cobblestone. Yeah. Specular's not going to do it. No, it's not going to do it. It's just the specular normal scale. Yeah, but what we can do is on our terrain layers, if we went ahead and just did a variant again on that cobblestone, so let's save this one out, save scene. Oh, whoops, my bad. Uh-oh, that's not going to help us. Well, you know, let's do this. Let's use what we have in here. If I wanted to blend with different textures on my terrain, I could come into my terrain. So if I click on my terrain, make another layer under my paint layers. So edit terrain layers. Let's make a new one. And let's go ahead and find that magical one. Cobblestone, this guy. And then in this one, we said, hey, let's add in, oops, back to cobblestone. Let's go ahead and lock that. Let's add in our normal map. Then when we go back to our terrain, tools, we have this palette we can use. So if we need to blend, you know, two together, you could do so if you needed it, right? So that's exactly what you would do if you wanted to blend, like, you know, cobblestone that's missing some or have grass or whatever. You could do like 3 or 4 textures and get some really nice variation on your terrain and stuff like that. So there's a lot you can do with that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't support emissive on terrain specifically. But I believe with Polybrush, let me just see really quickly, and we haven't got into Polybrush that much. Let me go ahead and move this up so you can see it. Okay, so if we go to, let me just look at our character here. And I think Polybrush has terrain editing. Let's see. Let's go to edit this guy. So I think if we make a lot of vertexes in here just to add more detail in the object. So I'll show you guys what Polybrush does really quickly. If you have an object, and it has to have a lot of edges to be able to do this, it can't just be like a simple cube. You need to have a cube with a lot of detail in there. But when you go to Polybrush, if I go into my menu here and go up to Tools, Polybrush, let's open the Polybrush window. Now this is another window. The guys who made ProBuilder made this as well. And I'll just go ahead and dock this in my scene as well so I can see it. All right. And I come to Sculpt on Meshes, right? It'll let you actually sculpt a mesh in your scene if you need to. And you can do that by like pulling them out or whatever. right? Which is kind of nice if you need to do custom things like a cave or just little rocks or something else. And if I go off of here, you see it leaves that in your scene, right? It's like you come in and immediately see what that Polybrush object looks like, which will be different than the Pro Builder stuff, right? Super easy to do that just by using Polybrush, but you need to, if you're using Pro Builder, you're gonna need to add that in there. But really helpful. Now I think with Polybrush you can blend materials like you do in like right here, I believe. Doesn't look like anyone chose. But you need to have a certain, okay, yeah, it doesn't work. You'd have to have a blending material, something that supports, emissives as well. But there are some things on the asset store that do support blending. Like you can actually paint materials on things. You just create them and then use them as a palette kind of thing. They just cost money, but lots of cool stuff in there. So anyways, with that being said, work on your levels. I would like to see at least some custom materials that you guys have made in those levels. So however you guys want to make them is totally fine. If you want to use Mudbox, that would be great. Name of the game is create a level. Ellen, and I'll put all this on the announcements for you guys, but Ellen has to go from start to finish of the level. I would like the level to work in 100 by 100 space. So when you set up your initial tile or terrain or whatever, work by 100 by 100 units. And you can see how big that is too by just coming up to your game object and creating a cube and just saying, hey, let's make this 100 wide by 100 long, right? So that's about the space we're going to be working with for your levels. That was crazy. I want to do that cube right there. That was nuts. So work in that kind of space. Just know that that's your boundaries. You can go above or below depending on how you want to do, but use that as like at least the minimum of what it needs to be created. Style's up to you. Whatever you want to do is completely up to you. She just has to get from start to finish. Add some obstacles in there, some jumping. Make it challenging. Make it so if you fall, you die. All that kind of stuff. Use the death layers to your disposal, and have fun with it. Sound good? Cool? Awesome. Okay, and I also put online, so I was messing around while you guys were on break just with some other scripts. And you'll see them I threw them on Canvas for you guys. If we go to Canvas here, we go into our announcements. Added this great add-on beginner scripts for added game functionality. So these guys, these Renaissance Coder guys, have a nice big repository of just stuff you can use for your levels. Specifically, I use the time spawner and the destroyer script as well as the spawner script that you can put on objects. But what's nice is in my scene, so I have where's this platform? Right there. I'll call it spawner, not platform. And that was just an object I created in Pro Builder. But what I'm having it do is spawn objects at specific time intervals. So if I wanted like things that fall that mess up your trajectory or whatever it is you're running through your level, this guy does that, right? So in here, and I'll just put it so we can see it, right? When I press play, that starts dropping these cubes into my level as I start going. Now it's going to stack them up like super high, but these are death cubes, right? If they hit me, I'll die, right? So think about that. And the way I set that up was all I did was just like we were messing around with the other objects, I just added the time spawn script, which I got from GitHub, onto that object. And then I said, hey, what object do I want to spawn? Kill cube, and what's the delay? Every 1 second, create a kill cube. And the kill cube was just an object that I created in Unity right here that has the kill layer, death volume on there, everything selected, and I'm just saying, hey, spawn that every time, right? They do have some other scripts on there if you want to mess with them, like destroyer.cs, which will kill the object after a certain amount of time. So if you want to spawn something into your scene from another object and then have it roll around like physics and then kill after a certain amount of time, you could use destroyer on that object to kill itself, things like that, right? So there's some different things on there to mess around with. And they have a great YouTube channel that basically talks about all of these scripts and what they do and how to use them. So super useful for stuff like that. There's like some camera shaker stuff and all kinds of fun stuff in there, just beginner stuff. So I put that in there. It's just a really good resource if you want to add some quick little things in there to add a little more variety to your levels. But yeah, have at it. Go for it. I know that was a lot to take in. I mean, that was a lot for today. But just enjoy your levels. Have fun with them. Make them. Spend the rest of the time. I think we've got like 2.5 hours left in class. So just work on your levels. If you need my help, I'll come around and help you out. Again, start to finish, make it challenging. 100 by 100 level range is what you need to work with. Styles up to you. You want to do space, medieval, whatever, go for it. Use those the death volumes. That's really going to help you. And we will check them out at the end of next class. I'm actually thinking maybe next class we'll go over some more functionality stuff we can add into our levels. You guys will still be working on them. I'm thinking maybe the following class we'll just like spend the whole time and just play all our games. Maybe not next class, but the one after that. So if that works for you guys. All right? Cool. Right on. And then after we finish our first levels, we get through this, the next kind of phase of this is going to be enemies, as well as doing custom enemies, modifying enemies, even modifying the main character, things like that, so we can really like customize these and mod them to our own levels and stuff. All right, cool. And then once we kind of like learn a lot of these fundamentals and functionality and things we're doing, then we'll start getting into the Quest, the Oculus Quest, kind of integrating that whole pipeline into our system and creating some virtual reality stuff as well. Okay, so we'll kind of cap out our class with that kind of stuff. So, all right, cool. Saw some hands. Can I come help you?
Yeah, we're just using the same assets. It's 3D Light asset.
Yeah, 3D Game Kit Lite. Use that to build it, just with the Ellen character. And literally, just your goal is create a level, start to finish, make it challenging. We'll all play them. All right, cool. So have fun, and that's what we're working on.